Namaste Internet. Hiya. My name's Simon, and I thought it was about time in my TSW journey that I make a video, put something online. Said I was going to do it ever since I started doing this, and it's because of the videos that I've watched that it basically sort of led me to where I am today. So what I was going to do, I didn't want it to be incredibly long. I know some of the videos are sort of quite long and detailed, but all this is going to be is just a sort of an update as to where I was, what made me do it. There's going to be my basic sort of history of the last year, because I'm about month 13, I think, at the moment. And then there'll just be a couple of things at the end that just sort of helped along the journey. I don't know why I feel a bit funny sort of doing this. Generally, sort of day to day, I feel okay. And for some reason, getting some bits together and just sort of preparing to do the video today, it's just sort of reminded me, I suppose, of the last year and what's happened, and it's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy. But yeah, I suppose we'll start at the beginning. If you see me looking down, that's because I'm going to be referring to notes all the way throughout of this, and also just as like making videos and talking to a camera is not something that I typically do. So if it looks a bit awkward in places, that's probably all it is. So without further ado, I thought I'd just sort of start by going before. So my sort of medical history in brief up until now. So I've had eczema my whole life. Varying degrees of severity, so it's probably at its worst when I was younger, when I was probably in my teenage years, and it was at that point that I suppose all I'd ever been told is to, and it was just doctor's appointments and it was dermatology appointments that I was having, is to moisturise and then just use a steroid. So that's all I've ever done up until about a year ago. And so what I would typically do is I'd be using a moisturiser about sort of 3 or 4 times a day. So wake up, moisturiser over the whole body. I've even got moisturisers at work, so a couple of intervals throughout the day at work I'd also be moisturising, and then later on in the day, just before going to bed, I'd be moisturising as well. And on top of that, I would be using this. So that is the steroid cream that I was using for years and years. I was probably prescribed this in my early 20s, and I'm 36 now. And that was basically all I've done to sort of treat my eczema up until this point. And I've had sort of varying sorry, I could hear noises, and that's just my dog chewing on the sofa. Not on the sofa, he's chewing his bone on the sofa. So with the steroid that I was using, that's probably been the main sort of course of treatment, I suppose you could call it, up until the last year, which is when I sort of changed everything. So the thing that, I mean, I've been looking at sort of varying things to do with my skin for years. I've changed my diet, I've changed all sorts of stuff, and nothing's really sort of made that much change. In my eczema history it mirrors a lot of people that I've seen their videos where they had eczema as a child, and that might be just like inside the elbows, like in the creases. You might have a little bit around your neck or something like that, but it wasn't ever that bad. And then I suppose over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's just been sort of gradually getting worse and worse and worse. So significantly enough, sort of like the main thing I noticed, it was a sort of barbecue a few years ago in the summer, and I just came out in this massive rash, and I don't know whether this was TSW or not. I've no idea, or if it was my eczema, but it just basically covered me like a map. Like half of me was my normal skin tone, then the other half of me would just be red and raised, and that would last for like a couple of months at a time. And all during this time, I'd still be carrying on my moisturising 4 times a day using a steroid. And then eventually it got to a point where just no matter how much of the steroid I would put on, it would just never go away. Like the redness would just never go away. It would fade, but the pigmentation, you could always just see that there was inflammation there, I suppose. And so that led me one day, sort of, I was just on YouTube as you are, and a video popped up, and it was just basically about curing my uncurable, or this particular video was about curing your uncurable eczema, and it led me to the website Itsan, and the rest is history really for basically what happened. So what essentially happened was this YouTube video sort of led me onto the website itsan.org, and what that then led me onto is something called TSW, so Topical Steroid Withdrawal, or it's referred to as red rash syndrome. And it led me to all of these people's journeys and stories about how it was actually the steroids that were causing the redness and the inflammation and all of their problems, which basically meant it was like a tick list. So I just looked at, are you on steroids? Is this what your skin is behaving like? Is it red and rashy? Does it never really clear up? And all of these other symptoms as well. I was having problems sleeping. My skin was just super thin. Like if I scratched, so a normal person, you could probably scratch your arm, and nothing really would happen. But I mean, if I just scratched my arm ever so lightly, I just cut really easily. So I'd cut myself, especially at warmer times throughout the year. So I'd just wake up and it sounds disgusting, and it is disgusting really. Like the bedding would just look like a bloodbath, like you'd been I don't know what it looked like you were doing, like clubbing seals to death in your sleep or something like that. I have no idea. But it was just horrific. You just wake up and I just feel like in the middle of the night, I'd wake up sort of every couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, and I just feel wet. And I knew what it was like, and this was going on for about probably sort of 2 or 3 years. Like my arms were just soaking wet with blood, and the blood would just never stop. So I'd have to wake up and I'd be like trying to clean up after myself, and sort of like trying to sort of bandage myself up and keep it sterile as best you can, and then just trying to go back to sleep. And then that was just it's weird, that just kind of became the norm. That was my new normal. And yeah, it was strange. And then I found these videos about Itsan, and then it kind of tweaked, like the penny drops, and I was just sort of like, oh, something else is wrong. And I kind of felt that something else was wrong for a really, really, really long time. But it's funny how things happen in life. I didn't really question it. This video pops in to my recommended. I watched it, and then I was just like, oh, okay. Then you go to Itsan, and you're just like, oh, okay. And then that leads you to all of these other people's journeys, and you're just like, okay. And bit by bit. This was really, I suppose, this was through sort of 2020 that I was looking at a lot of these videos into 2021, early 2021, and I just had to decide, I suppose, like what I was going to do, because nearly everyone that you see this horrific journey of just the car crash that is TSW, and it is a car crash. It is hell. It is grim. It's the worst period of my life medically. That's for sure. And I suppose so. What happened was, after seeing the videos, is I just did a lot of research, read a lot of blogs, read a lot about sort of steroids in the medical industry, and all sort of behind the scenes stuff, which I won't go into. But it made me decide that I was definitely going to go through TSW. And so in July last year was the time when I decided that I was going to give up the steroids, and I had a chat with my work. I work full time. And I had a conversation with my boss and with my partner as well. I told my partner that I was going to do it, and this is what I think is wrong, this is what I'm going to do. And luckily enough, my work are amazing, and the conversation with my boss was like, well, basically, if you do need to take time off, how long, worst case scenario, how long do you think you're going to give it? Because if your health is constantly on a decline and you just kind of do it off of a gut feeling, because if I'm honest, and yet again, there's no medical advice here, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving medical advice, I'm just explaining the story and the journey that I took. I didn't consult my GP or anything before doing it. I just decided that I was going to do this, and I felt like I knew what was wrong, and so I had this discussion with my work, and then that was it. So in July of last year is when I stopped taking the Elicom, and then it just proceeded. Like the first month was bad. It was a lot of inflammation. My face was particularly bad up until that point. Kept on having this problem where my face was swelling up. My face would just swell, and I've got no pictures, I'm afraid, that I can share. Funny how you don't really want pictures taken when you look horrific, but yeah. So I had these problems where my face was just sort of swelling, and then so as soon as I came off the steroids, that hit me like a truck. So the face swelled, my legs started swelling. And then the whole body just sort of blew up like a rash almost overnight. It was crazy. And so this is when I start sort of consulting my notes, if that's okay, because gradually sort of different things happened at different intervals. So I was still working for the first month. The rash had really sort of started to take over. And then I booked myself, when I told work what I was going to do, I booked myself a dermatology appointment. I couldn't really sort of like getting doctor's appointments with my GP is just sort of horrific. I live in the UK, and so I just decided, like, right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to speak to the experts straight away. So I'm going to bypass the GP, and I'm just going to pay private, and I'm going to pay for a private consultation at a dermatology unit. So that's what I did. So still working, progressively getting worse, progressively harder to work, because one of the first things that kicked in was I just couldn't sleep. It was just so uncomfortable, and a lot of people say about the insomnia, and it is real, and it is killer. And so I have this dermatology appointment during month 1, and she looked like she just wanted to. It scared the hell out of her by the look of things. She was just examining me under lights and just saying sort of like, right, your skin's horrifically damaged. Like she really wanted to. She recommended that I go to hospital. She prescribed me antibiotics, and she wanted to prescribe me steroids as well, because I told her that I wasn't taking my steroids, and I hadn't for a month, and so she said, right, well, you're mismanaging your eczema. So because you're mismanaging your eczema, that's all this is. That's all this craziness, and like at the time, I looked like it was like a walking corpse. It was getting really bad. I mean, you can see the pictures of other people if you just look at Google and you type in TSW or topical steroid withdrawal. You can see what it looks like, and that's what I look like. And I'll try and upload some pictures. I've only got some pictures of about me at sort of 6 months or so, so I'll try and include those at the relevant point. And so my hands were bandaged up, but this is still in the hospital, so it was only like a year into COVID. Like, things were opening up in the UK, and we were in between lockdowns, I think, and going into the hospital. I remember the guy when I was going into this appointment, and he was just like, "Can you sanitize your hands?" And I just showed him my hands, and there was just no skin on them. There was just sort of like lumps of flesh, and like I had skin on my palms. I think I had skin on my palms, but no skin in between the fingers, no skin really on the top, and they were just sort of scabby and oozy and nasty. And so I had that appointment, and then I left, and I had this massive long prescription of what she recommended, and then she recommended I go back on steroids. So I said, like, well, do I book another appointment? Do I get monitored? And she said sort of like, yeah, but only come back if you're willing to take the medical advice. Only come back if you're willing to take the steroids. And I was just like, well, I'm not willing to take the steroids. So it's basically like a prescription and see you later. So that was nice. And basically because of their attitude anyway, I was not interested in going back there anyway. So that wasn't necessarily a problem for me. I then had I got worse the week after that, I remember, and I had a week's holiday, end of August last year, and I had the week off holiday, and I basically just didn't sleep or do anything for the whole week. It was progressively getting worse and worse and worse, going into cycles of just sort of waking up in the morning, the bed was disgusting and oozy, and I've got long hair, and I'd wake up and my hair was stuck to the open wounds in my neck, and I'd have to basically sort of peel it off, so peeling your hair out of scabs and open wounds on your neck, and the back of my scalp was particularly bad. My ears were probably the worst. So I had no skin on the back of my ears. I would, especially at night time for some reason, that's when the ooze gets particularly bad, or it did at least for me. And this is only like a month in, and so like a month, like I'd literally turn my head and I'd have tissues all around my ears and around my beard and stuff like that, because I just know no skin on my face, on my cheeks, on my ears. They were just open wounds, and if I tilted my head, I'd actually get this brown sort of yellow fluid just coming out of my ears, and so I thought I had an ear infection or something like that. And so I then went to the hospital. So this is at the end of like 1 month. I went to the hospital, and then they examined my ears, and sort of they could see the sort of state that I was in anyway. And I said sort of like, actually the only reason, like, you know, I know what this is. This is topical steroid withdrawal, and this is, you know, as bad as it looks, I've just got to give it time. And I actually just got them to sort of like check on my ears and just to see what was going on. And they thought I had an ear infection, so they gave me more antibiotics. So dermatology, they gave me antibiotics, which was for my skin, and then the hospital then gave me antibiotics, which were for my ears, because they thought they were inflamed, and I couldn't really hear properly because of all the fluid in my ears, so I'd kind of lost my hearing quite a bit by that point. And then I had the conversation with work, because I was just like, I can't work. Like, there's no way that I can work. So I had the conversation with my boss, and then I just got into this cycle, which lasted for the next sort of 6 months after that. So month 1 to month 6 was just a cycle of phoning the doctor, getting signed off, and for whatever reason, I never saw the GP or my actual GP for the whole 6 months that I was off. I just literally phoned up, and I was just like, this is, you know, my eczema's horrifically bad at the minute, and I can't work. And he would ask how much time I wanted off, and I'd say 4 weeks, and I would go and pick up my sick note, my certificate, and that would happen every single month. It was crazy, and I just couldn't quite understand how I'd been signed off consecutively for like 6 months, and I hadn't seen my GP at all. Because my skin was bad, about midway through that, I had another dermatology appointment, and that was in a separate unit. So that was from my GP. I had a separate dermatology appointment because they recommended that I see a specialist, and it was the same as the first dermatology appointment. They said, right, you're not looking after your eczema, we recommend steroids, and you probably need to take antibiotics. And I just said that I wasn't interested, so that was the end of that one. I then sort of like during this sort of 6 months, I suppose, it was just getting progressively bad. Months 1 to 4 were the worst. So months 1 to 4 was the real immobile nastiness that you see some people can get into, where walking is painful. I had a lot of leg swelling, so I couldn't really walk properly. Constant shedding and flares, so I'd be hoovering every day, changing the bedding sort of once every day to every 2 days, and the ooze. The ooze is the problems with ooze is real. It is grim. So, and it seemed to be linked to my appetite when I was eating. It was crazy. So I'd literally sort of like, the ooze would be constant, and in particular, like the worst areas was just like inside my arms, wrists, and the top of my hands, and around here, my neck, the crease of my belly. So where the crease sort of folds over, I just had this sort of red line that was a darker red than the rest of me, because I was like a lobster. Like the whole of me was red anyway, but there was this sort of darker line that was red, and that would ooze particularly and just sort of pour out. Like the sort of groin area was just constantly weepy, backs of my legs, tops of my legs, my feet. I've still sort of like the problem areas are still sort of my wrists, which is why I've got these very attractive wrist mittens on. And then my feet are quite bad as well, so I still have to change my socks like twice a day, and I still put zinc cream and stuff like that. But they were the worst. And then that was just the cycle. It was just like every day, sort of like going up to month 4 was just I'd try and give myself something to do every day. I'd take myself out for a walk, like no matter how painful, because one of the worst symptoms that I had was temperature regulation. It was like end of summer last year, and the weather wasn't particularly bad, but I was wrapped up in winter coats and fleeces, and even in the house when I was awake, I'd try and not spend all day in bed. So I'd wake up and I'd come downstairs and I'd be lying on the sofa, and you can probably even see that the sofa is still covered in froze just because of the shedding still. But last year it was a necessity, because just through sitting down, it's horrific. You literally you sort of like, so you wake up and it's like there's you're a snake and you've shedded a full version of yourself in the middle of the night, and you've just got like a skin depository version of yourself in bed, and then you think sort of, oh, I'm going to go downstairs. So you walk downstairs and then sit on the sofa, and then you shed again. You get this cloud of skin particles just seem to be constant, and they just come off of you, and it's just draining. It's just so draining. And especially so my living situation is just sort of like, it's just myself, my partner, and my dog, and it's draining it was just draining for the both of us. It was just hell on earth. And she works from home a lot at the minute, and she was just living with this like shell of a person who would just like wake in the morning and shed, and no matter where I went, there would just be a mess, a constant mess that would follow me around the house, and it's not nice for me to live in, but it's not nice to let the person that you live with live through it as well. And so that was our life for sort of like 1 to 4 months, and I still sort of like, I do a lot of the cooking in the house, and I still did that. I still gave myself jobs to do, and sort of forced myself to do things like empty the dishwasher and cook dinner and walk the dog, and I was fortunate in the sense like I was just adamant through this that I would give myself some sort of routine as best that I could, because for at least that sort of that 1 to 4 months period that I wasn't sleeping at all. There was like no sleep, and it's just you're like, fatigued isn't even the word for it. It's just like it's just like I was hallucinating at one point. I would finish the dog walk and I wouldn't even realise that I'd kind of left the house. I'd just turn up back at the house and the dog was waiting at the door, and I was just like, okay, like I guess we've been for a walk, and then I'd just sort of come back into that. So yeah, it's crazy. It was a crazy few months. Let me see if I've missed anything off. So yeah, bad swelling, pain. Vision was impaired. So this still sort of comes back intermittently even now. So I'm at month 13 now, and towards the latter part of the day, so probably post about sort of 6 o'clock onwards. So between 6 o'clock in the evening and whenever I go to bed, because it wouldn't matter what time I went to bed, I wasn't sleeping anyway. But it would go from 6 o'clock onwards, and it would be like someone had put Vaseline over my eyes. And no matter whether I was sleeping or not, I'd be constantly sort of like you get sleep and you get gunk and rubbish that comes out of your eyes. So that was just a constant like clean-up operation. And whether it's just that or whether it's just problems to do with your vision, because I know some people that have put on steroids for a long period of time, they can have problems with their eyes. And I was just hoping it wasn't that. I was just hoping it wasn't like a cataract or anything like that. But at the time, it was just another symptom. It's like there's literally so many symptoms that you're coming up with. And during that time as well, I had a real problem with sort of like swelling and spots and stuff like that, like all over my body, but particularly my legs. So I'd literally wake up and it would be like having acne all down my legs, which could have been an infection or something like that. I probably should have had it checked out at the time, but I was just so in this routine of just sort of like, right, I'm just going to give it time, I'm going to get better, I'm just going to give it time, I'm going to get better. Eventually it went away. And whether that was the right thing to do or not, like I said at the start, like this is not medical advice, this is not necessarily saying this is what you should do or not to worry about it, but that's just what I did, and it did go away. But I don't know honestly what that was. I've seen other people say that they've had similar symptoms, and I'm guessing that it's just another thing that your skin is going through, this process of shedding and regeneration and healing and all of that. I'm guessing it's just part of that. So anyway, I mean the only other main thing that I suppose happened was, other than the ooze and also like the smell with the ooze and stuff like that, is it floods the house. It's just something that you kind of have to get used to. But it's disgusting. It's a horrific smell. So I did make a conscious effort to sort of like, my partner did actually, like I was so lucky, like she's been quite supportive with stuff like that throughout all of this. She turned up when I started going through this with just bags of cotton clothes and and she would do our weekly shopping, and she would come back with cotton gloves for me and stuff like that, and all stuff that is just sort of like, because you don't want to wear your sort of like nice stuff whilst you're going through this, so it's just literally sort of like burner clothes, like you're buying them, you're wearing them for the period of time that you use them. And then I've still got them here now, so still sort of like when I'm not wearing my sort of day-to-day clothes, like in the evenings, and also when I have another flare, because I still sort of like flare from time to time, I'll put those clothes back on, and they're just more comfortable. It's all like cotton long sleeves, cotton trousers, cotton everything. So appetite wise, between months of 1 to 4 and then onwards, I was just eating loads, eating a lot of food. I was having at one point I was having sort of like two full on dinners a day, plus breakfast and snacking in between. It was just constant, but all during that time as well I was losing weight. So I don't know, I didn't weigh myself, I haven't got scales here, but I got to the point where I lost enough weight that just to sit down was painful, because it was just basically like the bones of my of my butt just on the floor, no flesh, and you're just sitting there, and it was painful. So you spend your whole time sort of like lying horizontally. Like I remember just being horizontal for months on end, and it is scary. It's one of those, like, it's when that was happening. I'm just so grateful for everyone else that's been through this before me, because seeing other people go through this process and seeing that this has happened to other people as well does reassure you that just sort of like, oh, you are on the right track. This is something that's happened to other people, because if I hadn't read that other people had experienced it as well, it would probably freak me out even more so than it already was. So months 4 to 6 I had slight improvements, so just to go to the latter end of that, and then from months 6 to 7, so I still had all of the previous symptoms. So I had like I was starting to put a bit of weight back on at this point, I think. Still had loads of problems with like shedding, flares, uncomfortableness, but it was getting a little bit better. It was getting a little bit more manageable. This is about the point where I'll try and include some sort of photos around here, just so you can see what stage that I was at. At the turning point, so that was about, the pictures are sort of month 4, and going to 6, I'd started to look a bit more like myself, like I look today, just a bit less raw. So I'd had a lot of hair loss during this period, so my hair had really thinned out, and I've got patches that are still growing back now, so you can see sort of like those sort of hairs, but I lost like a lot of hair. Still no sleep. Basically my daily routine was what it was before, just waking, trying to keep myself busy with jobs around the house, and I was doing like a lot of yoga and just like washing clothes and hoovering up after myself. That was pretty much it. And then I'd started talking with my work about going back to work, because I'd started to get a few hours sleep a night. I think I'd started sleeping at like about 2, 3, 4 hours maybe on most nights, and at that point I just felt like I needed to get back to some sort of normality. And also, if I'm honest, I felt like I wouldn't be able to push. My financial situation with my work was quite good. Like I had full-time pay for the whole period that I was sick, and I knew past 6 months that was like the cut-off, and psychologically I knew that. I was like, I have to be better to go back to work by 6 months, because that's when my pay decreases, and like, if you don't have money coming in, you can't pay your bills, and you can't feed yourself. So that was the tipping point, and it was the right point for me, I think, anyway, because I got to a point where, as I say, partner working from home, it gave us a bit of space, because I could then go to work, she could have the home by herself, and she could have a bit of her time, and then I could have me time, and I could go to work and start building myself back up gradually to getting a bit better. And then month 7 to now, yet again, still have most of the symptoms. Still have the sort of like the oozing, not sleeping properly. My feet are still particularly bad, but not bad like they were before. My hands are quite sort of bad, but it's been getting better. It's been getting sort of like much better. And there was just like gradual sort of like week to week, there was just more improvements. And coming up to about a year, that was when I started to struggle, actually. Like that, it was sort of, because I was back at work, and because you're back at work, people start sort of like treating you like you're fully sort of better again. And I don't do a particularly sort of like strenuous job. It's like office-based job, so it's fine. But it's just one of those things where life starts returning to normal, and I was still having good and bad days and good and bad weeks. And so I'd have these days where you start arranging stuff again. Like there's birthday parties, there's barbecues, there's life. Life starts happening again, and I would still have these good and bad days. And so I think the thing is just during that period, it's just sort of like just to be patient with it and just to sort of like keep on the right path, and just to know that you are still going to get better, and gradually sort of the times that I was feeling well against when I was feeling poorly, it was just getting better, and it was getting better, and it was getting better. But I remember that I was still having I'd get home from work some days, and I would literally sort of sit down on the sofa, and that would be I'd just conk out. I'd just literally just sort of like sit down, and like the lights would turn off, and I'd be asleep for an hour. And then I'd come home from work another day, and I'd like the lights would turn off for like another couple of hours, and it was great in a way, because it's like, well, I'm sleep deprived, so I'm sleeping, but it was just a sign of just like, right, well, you're still not better, like sort of like you might feel like you're getting better, but you're still not better. But just to know, like, if you are planning on going through this journey, and if you are going through this journey as well, then it does come. You just have to give it time. You just have to give it time. So I suppose like life now, and what are things like. So I mean, you can see I've got my fancy wrist mittens, but I'll show you as best I can. But skin's healing. So let's see. Skin is healing. It's not a particularly good camera, but hopefully you can see that. Still a bit raw in between the fingers. Wrists are still scabby. They still weep. But generally, in terms of getting life back together and feeling sort of well in myself, it's all good. Sorry, the sun's really glary. You can see I've still got a bit of eczema on my arms there. Both of my arms are the same. I've got the same really on my legs. And then my face as well. My face, like, even though the glare, I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but my face is still a bit scabby. And yet again, I have good and bad nights. So you just got to take it for what it is. But it is getting better. We're on month 13 now, and it is definitely getting better. So I mean, I suppose the takeaways are just to sort of like sum up medically where I am now, and just to sort of go through a few bits. Like, so all through the whole process, as I say, I did a lot of research before. A couple of months in, my parents actually found out about this. There's like a vitamin, a supplement. It's called Pelamex here in the UK. I don't know if you can get it anywhere else, but I've been taking it. I looked up what it was. I even took it to a couple of my appointments so that the doctors could see what I was taking. They kind of shrugged their shoulders and they're just like, like it's a vitamin, but it's supposed to be good for the skin. So yet again, look it up if you think it would help yourself. I also take one of these a day, so I take like a multivitamin. I take cod liver oil every day. And then I take B12 because I don't have a lot of meat in my diet, so it's just to sort of supplement that, really. And then I also take a probiotic, so just like a little probiotic thing. The dietarily in the last sort of like 4 weeks, something that I've started doing, and I swear this has made a massive improvement, I've been reducing my sugar. Like, so just I'd passed that sort of ravenous phase in the last sort of like 2 or 3 months. Like my eating's become more normal instead of like eating the piles of food that I was out. And then I started putting weight back on as well, and I'm kind of back up to about just over 13 stone, I think, which is about my normal, I think, for before. But I started cutting down on sugar, so no biscuits, no cake or anything like that, and still have like the occasional one at the weekend. That's fine, you've got to treat yourself, haven't you? But it's just one of those things of just I seriously think like the sugar has a bit of an impact with your digestion, and that affects the skin, and it's really reduced the sort of night sweats. Like I'll still profusely sort of sweating at night and getting this ooze at night, and when I sort of cut down on the sugar, that cut that down. And then since then I've tried reducing like gluten as well, so the bread that I have is like gluten-free bread and all that sort of stuff, but typically when you buy that sort of stuff, like, it's well expensive. So I fully appreciate that. This is just stuff for you to try. Like, if you think it would help, like, I just felt like it would be an experiment, and so that's kind of ongoing at the moment. I suppose other things, tips wise, might as well just go through a few tips, basic things. Like, don't start unless you're ready. As I say, sort of like, so I did a lot of research on the build up to this before I had the conversations with work, before I talked to my partner about what I was going to do. Don't start unless you're ready, because it's hell. It actually is hell. And it puts your family and your friends through it as well, because they can't do anything to help you. They literally can't do anything to help, other than sort of, supporting as best they can. I remember having conversations with my just sort of like one of my closest friend, and he popped over with his brother-in-law a couple of times just to sort of give me a bit of company in the evenings. And that's about, socially in a week, that's about all I could cope with. So they visited like once a week, or not once a week, like, once every few weeks, a few times, until it got to a point where I sort of like I didn't really want to see anyone at all. And then I gradually started being a bit more sociable afterwards. And I think that's probably one of the things that I would recommend, is just sort of like be true to yourself in a weird way. I know it's a bit of a cliche saying, but if you really don't feel like seeing anyone, don't see anyone. There's nothing wrong with that. And then when you want to start basically sort of reopening the door socially in your life, then do it gradually and do it at your pace, because it's a really personal thing. It's like you've got to do whatever you feel is right, and you've got to do that at times when you think you're ready to do it. I think my parents struggled quite a bit with the fact that I was going through this, and they just couldn't. They couldn't do anything. Like, no one can do anything, and it's distressing for people. Like, I know if I was seeing sort of like one of my friends going through this, or one of my family members going through this, it's like it's awful. It's really, really grim. And yeah, so don't start unless you're ready. And then whilst you're going through it, just stay true to yourself, just in terms of like what you need from people. And if you need people to stay away, tell them that, respectfully, like, thanks but no thanks, like, I need to be by myself. And then alternatively, if you feel like it would be beneficial for you to see people, then let them do stuff for you. If people want to do stuff for you, then allow them to do things for you if that's what they want to do, I suppose, as well. Like, that's something else to sort of state. Make your own healing plan, and then listen to your body as well. So, as I say, like, with the appetite and with other things that I was going through, I just felt hungry, and because I felt hungry, I was just like, well, clearly my body just needs fuel. So I just needed to keep on fueling my body, and at the time I was losing weight, and I was just I didn't really worry about it at the time until I got quite skinny, and then it was painful to sit down. I didn't kind of worry about the whole the whole sort of losing weight until it got really quite bad. And then luckily there was a tipping point of a few weeks, and then suddenly I started like putting on weight again. But if you are ravenous and you're eating a lot, like, just eat what you need to eat. That's fine. Other tips: get a good Hoover. I mean, we've got a dog, so we've got a good Hoover anyway. But yeah, get a good Hoover, because our one's been put through the ringer in the last year, and it's still going. And it's like that, covering your furniture as well. I know, I haven't done this personally, but I know a lot of people, when it comes to sleeping at night, they sleep on towels, so that when the use starts, they can literally sleep on the towel. Like, when it gets soaked, they can pull it off, go back to sleep as best you can, pull off the next towel. That's a really good tip, I suppose. Ooze management. When it comes to ooze, as I say, like, I mean, I'm wearing these really fetching wrist mittens. They're actually socks. So you can see that's the heel of the sock there. What I do is I found like the tubey grip things. Like, I was using tubey grips on my legs as well as my wrists, but I would find that they were too clingy, like really, really sort of clingy. So when the ooze would get on them and it scabs, you'd have to really like rip it off. And it was just like, obviously if you're ripping off scabs continuously, it doesn't give anything a chance to heal underneath. And the socks are like a happy medium. Like, they're nice, they're loose-ish, but they're clingy enough to stay on. And so I just cut the toe bit of the socks off, and literally make a tiny little cut, and then you slip your thumb through it, and then it makes a fetching pair of sock mittens. Luckily, if you're anyone like me, I had about 30 odd pairs of Christmas socks upstairs, and like, who needs 30 pairs of Christmas socks? Like, so I just cut through a whole bunch of them, and that was my sock mittens. Cotton gloves as well. So I still wear these from time to time. Now this is going to look disgusting, and this is what my skin is still like at the minute. So I know it looks okay. Like, it's better than it has been, but this is what they end up looking like. So let's see if we can get the camera focused. Bit black, bit gunky, nasty. And if I'm honest, like, after I wear them for a night or two, like, they stink a bit, like, which is like the ooze smell. So the house, luckily enough, it doesn't smell of ooze like it was, but yeah, it's one of those things where obviously you're scratching still in your sleep, you're still itchy, and so the cotton gloves, they get a bit sort of soiled, so you just have to make sure that you're just like washing them every day or every other day. Also with the ooze situation, my shins were just like bare and raw for months, for about sort of 4 or 5 months. And so I did the whole sock mitten thing, but for my legs. Cut the end off the sock, and then I was just using it almost like a tubey grip on my legs, and that tended to work quite well. Because I just hated, one of the things that would keep me awake at night quite a lot was sticking to the sheets. Like, it just feels really disgusting. Legs particularly, when I was moving my legs, they would just stick to the sheets, and so that was a way of me putting the socks over, and you just wouldn't stick to stuff. The same with wearing I wear socks in bed because my skin is still quite open on my feet and my toes, and so I wear socks in bed, even on the hottest like summer days. At the minute, that's still something that I do. Yeah. So other than that, giving yourself little jobs to do, like I said before. Try and stay safe doing this, because like I say, I was still cooking. I said that earlier in the video. Like, I was still cooking throughout, and I had almost like a Mrs. Doubtfire moment of where she like sets fire to himself in the kitchen. So I was wearing a dressing gown just like every day for months on end, and so I was cooking with the dressing gown, and I've got like a gas hob, and so I set fire to the sleeve and kind of didn't notice, and I was just like flailing around the kitchen, and had to put myself out. So that was fun. So yeah, be careful. This is the thing with the sleep detriment, is just try and be as safe as you can, because you are walking around in just a daze, and a lot of times. And like I say, with like the dog would walk me. I wouldn't walk the dog was walking me. He's like my carer, and yeah, just try and be as safe as you can. So right, okay, this is a tip that I saw someone else do, but it really, really worked for me. Is like keeping the edges of your nails rounded, because even though it's like those cotton gloves at the minute, they've still got fingertips on them. I would, in the space of a day or two, I'd scratch through the ends of the cotton gloves, like, and one of the bits that didn't help is you get these sharp edges on the corner of your nail, and so you just need to sort of keep those trimmed off, because they cause a lot of damage. You can catch yourself, and if you don't keep them rounded, you can just gouge chunks out of your skin. Literally, you're just, because your skin is so fragile as well, whilst you're going through this, you will just take it's like a spade. You'll just dig chunks out of yourself, and it just, bleeds, oozes, does all of the stuff, and just takes longer to heal. So just make sure that you're keeping the edges of your nails rounded. And other than that, be kind to yourself, eh? Like, through COVID, like a lot of people did, I was reading a lot of, to coin them self-help books, but there's a few ones that are of worthy note, like How to Build a Healthy Brain. That was quite nice. There we go. How to Build a Healthy Brain, that was pretty good. It's got a lot of stuff of nutrition in there. I'm sort of referring to that more and more now. And read This Man's Search for Meaning. That was a really, really good book. Really, really sort of like useful in terms of sort of psychology, spirituality. And then also In Love with the World. There we go. In Love with the World. That was a really, really good sort of like reference point. So they're books that I read sort of like through 2020, through COVID, going into 2021. But all of the information in those, I've dipped in and out of them throughout whilst I was going through this process, because it's hard. It's flipping hard. And on the side of like just keeping myself busy at night, something that I just constantly do is like for the last sort of 3 or 4 years I've been doing a lot of yoga. Part of this is part of the eczema journey of like, what's causing this. And whilst I was still on the steroids and everything like that, steroids and moisturisers, I was convinced for a few years that maybe it was stress, maybe it was something like that was causing my skin to flare. So I started doing meditation and yoga and all of that sort of stuff. And I kind of feel like now is the time that I'm benefiting from the yoga and the meditation, is because of like I was doing it before and not really sort of getting any results sort of skin wise or anything. And then as soon as I started going through this healing process, this journey of TSW, all of that stuff sort of kicks in. And when you can't sleep at night, and when you just feel beside yourself scratching or anything like that, just doing yoga and doing more like more and more like sometimes until I just sort of collapse in exhaustion, which might sound a bit extreme, but you do get beyond tired to the point where you just need something, just anything, just to distract you from the fact that you're feeling hot, you're cold, you're sweaty, you're uncomfortable, you're itchy. At no point do you feel comfortable. I never really did the whole sitting in the bath thing. I know a lot of people just sit in the bath. I never really did that. And if I'm honest, I suppose just to cover off the sort of the hygiene side of things, I didn't do no moisture therapy, but I've done literally minimal sort of moisture contact for the majority of the whole process. So I was having baths for probably about sort of 2 or 3 months, and it just got too painful. I'd come out of the bath or I'd come out of the shower, and when the skin was like drying up afterwards, it was more painful than it was before. So I just twigged that it wasn't good for me, and so I just literally just wash, just literally keep yourself sort of as hygienic as you can. So just wash bits and pits, and then just try and look after the rest as best you can. And yeah, and I still haven't had, I probably haven't had a bath or a shower for for months. Like it's probably at least 4 months now, of just sort of washing and things, and regardless of how you feel, and that just felt right for me. It's different for different people, but that just felt right for me, and I'm quite looking forward to when I feel able to do it again. But I think I've almost developed like I was talking to my partner the other night about this, and I was just like, and she kind of said to me, she's like, when are you gonna like start doing that again? And I was like, I don't know. And I think it's because I've almost got this PTSD towards it, and it's the weirdest thing. And this all sort of started around, and I started getting anxious about silly things, about the sort of year anniversary of coming up to this, and like baths and showers, like I just associate a bath or a shower at the minute with like the pain of afterwards. Like I'd be coming out and taking painkillers after the bath because it was so uncomfortable. It's like someone has sucked all the moisture out of my skin. As immobile as I was before getting in the bath, I was even more immobile afterwards, and it just felt horrific. So I just stopped doing it, and yeah, and so I suppose that's the thing. You just do what you feel is right. I know from a safety standpoint, I think it's safe to recommend that if you do feel like anything is that scary that you need like medical assistance, then there's no shame in seeking medical assistance. I know that some people like myself, like as I say, I haven't seen my GP in months or anything like that. I didn't have regular blood check. I know some people they have checkups, they have their bloods checked, they have all of this, but I just kind of did it, and I was just sort of in the sense that if it's that bad, then I will drag myself into A&E or something like that. But luckily I've never felt like I've been at that sort of tipping point, other than in the first sort of like few months of having my ears checked out and having antibiotics and things like that. And then I've just kind of let the body do what the body needs to do. And that's the hard thing as well, is going through this as well. And people see how horrific you look, and I know like when I'd see friends, family, and that, and they see the state that you look at, and the fact that you're kind of going against, I've seen a totally free dermatologist through all of this, and all of them tell you, they're like, this doesn't exist, you just need to take steroids, and it's all in your head. You can't just look at stuff on the internet, and like the stuff on the internet, it's all rubbish, and you've got to listen to medical professionals, and that's a conversation for another day. But it's something that I just felt like I was just like, I've got this. I've got, like, my body's got this, and just stubbornness, I suppose. Like, when everyone around you sort of going like, oh, I think you should probably go and see a doctor or something like that, and you're just like, no, it's fine. Like, look at all these other people that have done it, and they're okay. And I just kind of knew, or it felt like I knew, that it would just be okay. And for me that was fine. But I know other people, like, if you're not of that mentality, then by all means, like, try and find a decent doctor, try and find good medical professionals. Maybe do that even before you start doing this. Try and find someone through ITSAN, through wherever, who can just support you medically, even if it's just emotionally, like, through this process, because it is a horrific, but it does get better. It definitely does get better. And I know when life started getting back to normal, I went to a couple of concerts with the same friend that was sort of visiting me throughout, sort of like intermittently, and it just felt amazing. Like, it's just sort of like it's just proper emotional and everything. It's almost like being born again. You start going into the world, and you're like, wow, live music. Like, I remember this. And I mean, on the side of this, like, I've got a band, and I play guitar, and something that I physically couldn't do for months was play guitar, because it's like, because your fingers, you have no skin on your fingers. You can't play guitar if you're like, if you're peeling your fingers away from each other, you can't use them for anything. And so I couldn't play guitar for months, and it was just really emotional, like the first times of getting back together with the band again, and playing music. It was amazing. And so just, I suppose, to end on a positive, it gets better. I hope this video is of use to someone. I know it's horrifically long, and I didn't think it was going to be this long, but if anyone's made it to the end, thanks very much. Namaste. Have a good day. Questions welcome. I'm not really an online kind of person, but if you put questions in the video, I'll try and check it every now and then and respond if anyone's got any. Take care.